we would just end up talking and talking and talking because I guess because we're both storytellers in some way, and he had an interesting way of telling a story, and so I got that news, and I'm just kind of walking around, and I text my ex and let her know what had happened, and I still didn't know. Oh no, I think he did tell me the other person was D, and I didn't know. I don't think I knew at the time if anybody was alive yet or anything. And long story short, I mean, Mike was blinded, and Dee was murdered. She died. Mike was shot in the face, and apparently Dee had run down to help him. And the person who shot him shot her, and she didn't live, and Mike is blind for the rest of his life. He had to move out of the building. And as everything kind of settled, all of the neighbors, everybody in the building, it was a 12-unit building, old, kind of dilapidated building, and we all came together and we were talking about what was going on and what's going to happen, and I said, they're probably going to sell, and I don't blame them. And everybody was like, no, of course not. Of course, it makes sense that the family would sell. And I said, hold on a second. So I said they're probably going to raise the rent really high on us. And everybody's like, yeah, probably. And I said I would start looking for a place. And I went and I tried to do some research on how to co-op a building, like how to get a loan for a building. And what I found out was that it's very difficult to secure a broken up loan amongst 12 different people. And that sometimes the best way that you can do that is with public banking, which is, I don't know, as far as I know, the only place that I know of that has public banking is North Dakota. I'm sure there's more, but that's the limit of my understanding. So a few months go by and people kept coming and looking at the place. We had a manager who was this scatterbrained kind of, I don't know how else to explain her, but kind of a fool. And she was okay, but she was kind of annoying, And I was just, when I get in a certain mode, like I just kind of shut down to certain people, and I know somebody that's trying to raise my rent, and I just don't really want to talk to her. And she's talking about market value and all this bullshit, and they're charging $300 extra for Mike's apartment now that he's gone. And they even had me paint it. So I played a part in that whole thing. I got a month's rent, which was $600. So, typically an apartment that size would be like $1,500. But so they, eventually this old man comes in to look at the place. And I had met this guy before, because I had done 7 painting estimates for him because I'm a paint contractor. And so I knew this guy, and I knew that he wasted 2 days getting estimates from me, not because he was actually interested in the estimates, but because he wanted to see what it would cost to compare it to see how much he was looking to spend and that sort of thing. So he just wasted 2 days of my work week, so that he could get pricing, so that he would know what it would cost to have his guys paint his house, because he didn't hire a contractor. He had his guys do it, and I saw them out there, and I actually saw them. He's lead certified, he says, and I saw the guys out there not following an EPA protections or OSHA protections when it comes to dealing with lead-based paint. They were, in shorts and t-shirts and had a cloth tarp out there, no plastic. A lot of they broke every regulation. They weren't actually doing any of the lead prep protocol. They might have on other houses. I only saw it on one. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So I knew this guy, and he comes in, and he introduces himself to me and acts kind of friendly, but I just know. And they're looking at the place, seeing what they could do to, estimating the cost that it would take to upscale it. And I fucking hated him. I hated him right from that second. I knew exactly what was going to happen. And I told everybody, I was like, man, if they raise it up to, I max out at 900. They raise it more than 900, I'm out. Like, I think maybe 850 you could get for this place, but anything more than that, I'm gone. And we didn't hear anything. We tried to talk to Walt, and he said, yeah, it's going to sell. And we're just waiting for it to go through. Walt was the brother-in-law of Dee, the owner. And so we didn't hear anything from the new owner. And then we get this note from George Janoski and Southside Investments. And it says basically that your rent will now be $1,100 a month. As you know, I had to pay a pretty penny to secure this place. And so to make up for that and some of the renovations that I'm going to do, the rent will be up to $475, so almost $500 a month. And this was absurd. He didn't even talk to us. He left a note saying our rent was going up $500 a month and that we had 1 month to either move out and find a new place to live or come up with an extra $500 a month. So either way, we were looking at having to come up with a bunch of money for a deposit, or which he was going to try to keep our deposits, I believe, because he was going to use them for renovations and everything. So I freaked out. I got on social media. First thing I did was call the building next to me and asked them if they had any openings, and they did. And because I know the people and they know my cat, because my cat wanders around, they were able to get me a place, and I secured a place basically that day. I didn't have it secured, but they wanted to do my background check and all that kind of thing. And I knew I was probably going to have a place. Susan also applied for the same place. And unfortunately, I just got there first. And it really didn't feel good to beat her out for the place. But she was happy that I got the place, and she found a place too. But anyway, so I got on social media, and I contacted Creme Tube since I had done the interview with them about the shooting, and said, hey, here's an update on what's going on with this building. And do you want to interview me about what is happening now? And they asked if I could be there at 6 or something. And I said, yeah. And by 11 o'clock news, I was there, and I had already been contacted by Terry Anderson from the Tenants Union, and Jessa Lewis, who was running for state Congress, and Kate Burke, who was a city councilwoman. I decided, because of my trust in unions, that I would work with the tenants union first and above all else. And I didn't know much about Kate Burke. I didn't know much about Jessa Lewis, but I know what a tenants union is. And so with the city council person, with any politician, if you don't know their history and their background, you can just assume they're a politician. And so that's what I did. And I worked with the tenants union, and she had me meet up with her a couple times and wanted me to go, and then got something brought forth to city council. The news story got wheels and took off, and it was a big story. And they took me to city council, and I told my story there. Rick, who lived upstairs, he also told our story. and what had happened and the unfairness of it all. And then Steve Corker from the Landlords Association and Mike Fagan decided to go in the meantime and talk to the landlord, George Stanowski, in Southside Investments, and talk to him about a resolution for this. Now, I appreciate what they did, but I also see it as a political stunt and a political move. It was definitely, it wasn't out of the goodness of their hearts. I mean, maybe partially, and maybe more so with Mike Fagan, maybe with both of them. It could be some compassion, but also I believe that it was an absolute fear of our story catching on and getting people motivated to do something about the fact that tenants in this city have no rights. And because they have no rights in this city, landlords have been able to get away with a lot. And right now, rent prices are skyrocketing. And I'm trying to sit down now. So rent prices are skyrocketing in Spokane. They've gone up, I think, like 25% in the last couple of years. And they keep going up. Every time I look for a place, the same places will be there, if they have extra units and everything, and people flowing in and out. The rents will be up like $100 more every year, $150, $200. And so landlords have been making money hand over fist the last few years. And of course they love it, like it's paying off. Their investment is paying off. And even though it's at the detriment of the community, it's paying off for them. And so anyway, Steve Corker and Mike Fagan got George Janowski to agree to pay up to $2,000 moving costs for us. $2,000 moving costs, give us our deposits back, and give us 60 days to move out. Now, we had to fight for some of that. And eventually it got to a point, like I was running back and forth for tenants to the landlord and being like the mediary in between. And it was just a really odd experience, like talking to this person that was kicking me out of my home and him being like super nice to me, even though he's weird and a creep, but being nice and just smiling the whole time. And I just remember thinking, like, how do you disassociate yourself so much from what you are doing that business as usual is all that matters? Like, it's just business. It's not personal. You're not concerned about the people you're throwing out on the street. They're just a commodity, and that's okay, because that's how this system works. And I don't understand that disassociation. Like, it's still human beings, and you're still kicking them out of their home, one of which had lived there for 50 years. So anyway, I went back and forth getting checks from George and telling him what everybody's moving expenses were, and then getting their deposits back afterwards. And it was a small victory, but still at the same time, it doesn't change what is happening. It doesn't change that this is going on. And while we did that, another one of his tenants had come to the tenants union, and we found out that he gives these one-way leases, which essentially, just to shorten it up, basically what a one-way lease is total protection for the landlord and no protection for the tenant. So you are on it's a 12-month month-to-month lease. So you promise to be there for 12 months on a month-to-month lease that he can change at any time, raise your rent at any time during that 12 months or after, and you can't leave. If you leave, you forfeit. You owe him like $350 or something plus your deposit. It's just insane. So George Janowski is kind of the prime example of why we're fighting for all of these tenant protections. Obviously,